Even as we celebrate tonight, we know the challenges that tomorrow will bring are the greatest of our lifetime.
Barack Obama was not born into a clear or settled identity. From the beginning, his background placed him between cultural, national, and personal reference points that did not align neatly with one another. His family structure, his upbringing, and even his name existed outside the familiar categories that often provide children with a stable sense of belonging. As a result, his early life was shaped less by certainty than by adjustment. This condition did not arise from a single event or decision. It developed gradually, through repeated exposure to environments in which expectations were present but alignment was incomplete. Identity, in this context, was not inherited as a finished framework. It had to be assembled over time. He grew up with an awareness that he did not fully blend into any single environment. This awareness was not driven primarily by confrontation or exclusion, but by ambiguity. When an individual does not fit cleanly into established social expectations, attention follows. Observation replaces ease, and interpretation becomes constant. Over time, this condition encourages caution. It also encourages attentiveness. The individual learns to assess context before acting and to consider consequences before speaking. These habits form early and persist, often without conscious intent. From an early age, Obama learned that how he spoke, how quickly he responded, and how visibly he reacted carried consequences. This understanding was not abstract. It was reinforced through repeated interactions in which perception mattered. He adjusted by listening more than he spoke and by observing how people behaved, particularly those in positions of authority. This was not a withdrawal from engagement. It was a method of understanding it. He paid attention to how influence operated in practice rather than how it was described in theory. Over time, this attention became systematic. Observation extended beyond social dynamics. It also applied to language, tone, and timing. Speech was not simply a means of expression. It was a tool that could either clarify or complicate a situation. By moderating his use of it, he reduced risk and increased control. This approach did not eliminate disagreement or misunderstanding, but it limited exposure. The result was a pattern of careful engagement rather than spontaneous reaction. This habit of observation gradually turned inward. Alongside studying others, he became attentive to his own reactions, emotions, and impulses. Emotional restraint became a learned discipline rather than an assumed trait. It allowed him to manage how he was perceived and how he responded to pressure. Over time, this discipline developed into a consistent pattern of self-regulation. The process was incremental. It involved recognizing emotional triggers, identifying their effects, and choosing alternative responses. This approach favored analysis over immediacy. Living between identities often produces a sense of distance rather than belonging. In Obama's case, this distance did not result in detachment from society. Instead, it produced a heightened awareness of it. He became accustomed to navigating ambiguity and holding competing perspectives without resolving them prematurely. While many people seek certainty as a form of comfort, he learned to function without it. This capacity did not remove tension. It allowed tension to be managed rather than avoided. Ambiguity requires tolerance. It also requires discipline. Remaining composed while facing incomplete information or conflicting expectations demands restraint. Over time, this restraint becomes habitual. Decisions are delayed until context is sufficiently understood. Responses are measured rather than instinctive. This approach reduces error but can also slow resolution. It reflects a preference for stability over immediacy. This capacity for restraint and tolerance of complexity shaped his public presence. His manner of speaking was measured, and his use of silence was deliberate. Rather than relying on forceful expression, he relied on precision. Statements were structured to minimize misinterpretation and to emphasize continuity. This approach conveyed stability rather than urgency, and control rather than reaction. Over time, these qualities became associated with authority. Authority, in this case, was not derived from assertion alone. It was reinforced by consistency. Repeated exposure to controlled behavior under pressure established expectations. Observers learned that responses would be predictable in form, even if not always in content. This predictability reduced uncertainty and increased confidence in leadership. It also limited spontaneity. When opportunity and responsibility expanded, these traits were already established. His approach to leadership reflected habits developed long before he held formal power. Emotional regulation, careful consideration, and an emphasis on deliberation remained central to his conduct. These characteristics were not adopted for public performance. They were the result of long-term adaptation to environments in which missteps carried lasting consequences. As responsibility increased, so did scrutiny. Public roles intensified the need for consistency. Actions were no longer evaluated solely on their immediate effects, but on their symbolic implications. This added a layer of complexity to decision-making. Each choice carried interpretive weight. Managing this required further restraint and further reliance on internal discipline. The demands placed on him also carried symbolic weight. He was frequently interpreted as representing ideas larger than himself. Such symbolism can limit personal expression and reduce space for ordinary vulnerability. The individual becomes a reference point rather than a participant. While public admiration increases, personal distance often increases alongside it. This condition is common among individuals whose roles carry significant representational meaning. Symbolic roles tend to compress identity. Complexity is simplified for public consumption. Nuance is often lost in favor of coherence. For the individual, this can create tension between internal experience and external perception. Managing that tension requires ongoing adjustment. It also reinforces the need for emotional control. Composure, while often praised, requires sustained effort. Maintaining consistency under scrutiny involves limiting visible emotional range and absorbing pressure internally. Over time, this can narrow the space for personal expression. The discipline that supports public stability can also restrict private release. The individual becomes practiced in containment. Containment does not eliminate emotion. It redirects it. Feelings are processed internally rather than expressed externally. This approach reduces volatility but increases internal load. Over extended periods, the cumulative effect can be significant. The cost is not immediately visible, but it shapes behavior and outlook. Despite these constraints, Obama demonstrated an acceptance of complexity rather than resistance to it. He did not seek complete consensus or universal approval. Instead, he appeared to accept that some degree of misunderstanding was unavoidable. This acceptance reduced the need for constant justification. It allowed him to operate within defined limits without continuous recalibration. Acceptance, in this sense, functioned as a stabilizing factor. By acknowledging the limits of control over perception, he reduced the pressure to manage every interpretation. This allowed greater focus on process rather than reaction. It also reinforced the value of internal clarity over external validation. Historical assessments often focus on measurable outcomes and formal achievements. Less attention is given to the personal cost of sustained restraint and symbolic responsibility. Behind public roles are individuals shaped by long periods of adjustment, self-monitoring, and internal negotiation. These processes do not appear in records, but they influence conduct. When the public image is set aside, what remains is a person who learned early that clarity would not be provided externally. As a result, he developed it internally. His trajectory reflects the effects of long-term observation, emotional regulation, and adaptation to ambiguity. These factors shaped his conduct as much as any external opportunity. Adaptation, in this context, was continuous. It did not end with formal authority. Each stage introduced new expectations and new constraints. The response remained consistent: assess, regulate, proceed. This approach reduced volatility and reinforced continuity. Barack Obama's presence in public life was not the result of a straightforward alignment between background and expectation. It emerged from prolonged adjustment to conditions that offered limited guidance and required personal construction of identity. His approach was defined less by reaction than by analysis, and less by certainty than by control. Control, as demonstrated here, was not absolute. It was selective. It focused on response rather than circumstance. External conditions could not always be shaped, but internal reactions could be managed. This distinction informed decision-making and communication. Over time, this approach produced a recognizable pattern. Stability became a defining feature. Whether in moments of agreement or disagreement, the form of engagement remained consistent. This consistency reinforced institutional confidence and reduced unpredictability. The cost of such consistency is often overlooked. It limits range and compresses expression. It requires continuous vigilance. The individual must remain attentive not only to external events, but to internal states. This dual focus demands effort. Even so, this method proved durable. It allowed sustained engagement across changing conditions. It also provided a framework for navigating complexity without escalation. In environments where volatility can amplify consequences, this restraint offered protection. Ultimately, his development illustrates how identity can be constructed through adaptation rather than inheritance. It shows how ambiguity, when managed deliberately, can become a source of stability. It also demonstrates how internal discipline can shape public conduct over extended periods. This account does not rely on singular moments or dramatic shifts. It reflects gradual processes that accumulate over time. Observation leads to adjustment. Adjustment leads to habit. Habit leads to structure. Structure supports continuity. Barack Obama was not shaped by a single defining experience. He was shaped by sustained exposure to environments that required careful navigation. The result was a pattern of conduct marked by restraint, analysis, and control. These qualities defined his public presence and influenced how he exercised responsibility. In this sense, his story is less about transformation than about formation. It is the record of how long-term conditions influence behavior, and how adaptation can become character.